Hello, I'm Trace Haythorne with ACPE. I'm here today with Linda Wilkerson, who is the current treasurer and secretary of the ACPE board, and with Patrick McCoy, who is the immediate past chair of the ACPE Foundation. Today, we'd like to have some conversation about the APC-ACPE proposed merger and to talk specifically about our finances. So Linda and Patrick, you've both been a part of ACPE for many years. You're both officially retired at this point, though I know you're retired like a lot of our people are. You are still both very active and serving in a variety of capacities. You've seen these associations engage in these conversations in the past. What seems different this time? Linda, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think for me, what seems different is just the level of openness to this conversation and to regarding, at least for ACPE members, regarding our the members of APC as our professional colleagues, and I think also a willingness to lean in a little more in these very divisive times towards unity and towards, thinking that there's something really precious to be gained in not being so polarized. And I don't know that we've necessarily been polarized, but separate from one another. And that there just seems to be more openness, and maybe it's within ACPE, at least my feeling as I've talked to people on the board and other folks. I've talked to a lot of people who just say, wow, this has been a long time coming. I think this is really the way to go. And I think that has something to do with where we are societally, honestly.
That's helpful. Thank you. Patrick, what's your response to that one?
Well, I think my response sort of picks up where Linda stopped. The difference seems to me to be in the environment. That we're in a circumstance now quite different, I think, even from 5 or 10 years ago in terms of our understanding of the shifts in our society's embrace of spiritual care and what spiritual care means. We're continuing to see changes in religious affiliation at the same time that we're seeing a continued expansion of interest and I think demand for spiritual care services.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really a kind of a shift in the way our whole culture looks at spirituality that really comes to it involves necessary changes, I guess is what it comes down to, that we're growing into as an educational profession. But part of what that spells, it seems to me, is an increasing awareness of the need for us to be growing as an educational organization, and the increasing kind of demand for integration of what we do as educators with what the needs of the people that are the end users of spiritual care are. And in some ways, our former students who are partly us and partly not us are the growing edge of awareness of what those needs are. So it just makes a lot of sense to me to work towards more integration of the clinical application of what we develop as educators.
That's really helpful. I'm aware March 30th, the Gallup Institute posted a new study that showed that congregational affiliation for the first time in the US has dropped below 50%. And I think that speaks to one of those changing demographic landscapes that both of you all are pointing to, that we're just in a very different world today.
Now, one other thing I would say too is I just think we're in a more competitive environment. There are more people who are offering versions of clinical pastoral education. I think that, part of the environmental change is the need to both differentiate ourselves, and I don't mean just educationally, but to be able to join together with spiritual care practitioners to offer in this environment a very professionally well thought out model for providing spiritual care. And that, I think, takes all of us. It takes providers and practitioners. It takes, in the practitioner realm, there's the spiritual care psychotherapists, then counselors, the practitioners of chaplaincy in a variety of places, and the educators. And I think we have to all come together and develop and really speak with one voice to the larger world and community about what we think really grounded spiritual care looks like.
That's helpful too. Some of the other leaders I've spoken with noted that we're in an environment where it really is kind of a buyer beware place for students and also for institutions as to what's going on out there. And so to be able to provide sort of a go-to trustworthy source was one of the things they emphasized was important to them in this. Linda, some members have raised concerns that the driver for this merger is financial. Can you speak to that concern?
Yeah, I can, because as the treasurer, I certainly, think about that, or treasurer for ACPE. I actually don't think that the driver is financial at all. I think there are a lot of other very important factors. We just talked about some of them, but there are a lot of them that are really driving this. I do think that, there's the opportunity to gain some efficiencies. I mean, in terms of bringing organizations together, but and even some potential kind of marketing opportunities that I hope might bring in some income to ACPE down the road. But at this point, I don't think finances is the primary driver at all. And we're very fortunate that both organizations are financially stable and in very good places. We did due diligence, as with looking closely, each group looking closely at the other's finances, and finding that we're both in very good, strong financial positions. Nobody is taking on an organization that's limping financially, or so I think that's a wonderful thing. But no, I don't really see finances as the driver here. And I think that's a good thing. I think if it were just financial, that would give me some pause.
Yeah, so both groups are approaching this from a place of strength as opposed to out of any kind of fear or crisis mode.
Right.
I just want to sort of support or reinforce that point. It seems to me that in our profession, for a variety of reasons, we may have a tendency to approach change with a sense that it's fear motivated, or that the changes are forced upon us out of desperation, like we're not going to survive or something like that. And the financial side of this, I think, is just one example of the way that we really could look at this merger proposal as something that's not forced upon us or is an act of desperation, really, but really an act of opportunity. Something that's responding to challenges, yes, but not challenges that are, in a sense, existential. So it really seems to me to be more about growth, creativity, opportunity, and responsiveness to need, the needs of the people that we serve, than it is with kind of survival sort of things.
Yeah, very much so.
That's very helpful. Patrick, we've also had some members raise some concerns about what happens to the foundation, especially since the funds within it were given for specific reasons. Can you share a little bit of what we've talked about there and how that would function in the new structure?
Well, the foundation would presumably become a foundation that serves the entire new organization. the funds within it that are designated are protected by the kinds of commitments that we've made to our donors. Not all the funds that the foundation manages are donated funds. Some significant portion of that is generated income that has been managed by the foundation to build resources for the whole organization. The foundation itself operates as with some independence, but as a essentially as a servant to the organization as a whole. It has its own board, which is by its constitution has majority members that are members of ACPE. And presumably that would need to be restructured in some way, or at least reconfigured in a way that acknowledges an expanded membership. But the board also includes independent members with independent in the sense of not affiliated directly with the organization, but bringing expertise in law and finance and fund management and that sort of thing, which I have found to be extremely useful to guiding the kinds of decisions that we make as members of the organization, to help us secure the funding, to secure the maintenance of those funds, and also to help us be assured that we can respond to the obligations we have to our donors, as well as serve the needs of the organization. There are basically two, just off the top of my head, designated funds that are that include the Glaze Plummer Fund, which is a donor-created fund, and the MAP Fund, which is designated for programming in the Psychotherapy Commission. And it's the educational purposes that they brought into the organization when we joined with them. So at bottom, I don't imagine that there's anything to be particularly concerned about in terms of preserving donor intention in those funds, because they are protected by law as well as by intention.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think we have seen some wonderful growth in the foundation, and that it's really healthy as well. 2020 was not for the faint of heart. I'm very glad to be on the other side of the roller coaster that was that year. But I think that's really helpful to hear. Basically, donor intent drives the function of the foundation going forward, and we will work to manage that.
Yeah, I think ACPE can be very grateful to to my predecessors on that board and to the leaders of that board over the years for the work that went into establishing a sound management process. It didn't come overnight. It wasn't what we did first thing out of the gate. But there was some really wise and significant commitment of work to establishing firm ground rules and a well-established set of financial policies to govern that work. And we've continued to see very positive growth in the assets that we have available to support the work that we do, as well as increasing awareness and learning about grant funding and that kind of thing.
That's great. Thank you. Deep appreciation for those that have gone with us this far.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, we've had several questions from folks already about annual dues and fees. What do we know at this stage about that? I think one of the particular questions is, if I'm members of both, am I going to have to still pay 2 fees? Any insight?
Well, so no decisions that have been made yet about fees. It's hard for me to imagine that if we join together as one organization that you will still be paying 2 fees, but we really haven't made any sorts of decisions about that yet. And that really will be under the purview of the board of the new organization to sort of make those kind of plans and decisions. I think everybody is conscious of wanting to give people value for their dues. And I think that, that's one of the great things about this new organization. I think whatever dues we each end up paying, that we're going to get a lot of value for our membership. I think that's all I can say at this point.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think, again, there's a number of things that we're going to be answering over these next several months, but it's good to at least have some sense of where we are at this stage.
Yeah.
For both of you, Patrick, I'll ask you first, are there particular opportunities or possibilities that excite you about the merger or give you a sense of hope for the profession as you think about it?
Well, I don't know if I'm necessarily the most imaginative fellow in terms of thinking about how these opportunities might develop, but in sort of thinking about that, I'm really aware of how my own practice as an educator has benefited from the continued contributions of those that have that I've educated and have been educated by others that are now working closely with me. Just as a very simple example, many years ago, one of my educator colleagues here attended a APC conference and came back with an idea that a lot of people are integrating now, the tea for the soul concept. It's pretty common, I think, now. But we introduced it in our hospital, and one of the things I was noticing with the CPE group I've been supervising recently has been how rich their learning has been by the opportunity to collaborate with the staff chaplains in our hospital, to learn from their mentoring and collaborating with them, and the way that has introduced them to a whole different dimension of spiritual care in an institution, by their opportunity to do staff ministry in that regard, which is harder to do for single unit students, I think. So that's just an example, a simple example, I think, but one example of the ways that there's a kind of a feedback loop potential, that where the educational opportunities for students that we have now are expanded, enriched, sharpened, and deepened by our collaboration, both within our clinical settings, but also across the breadth of the organization, with folks that are developing new ways of doing ministry on the ground in the clinical settings.
That's great. Thank you. Linda, how about you?
Well, there are a lot of things that really excite me about it. And this sort of touches on something that Patrick talked about, but I really look forward to having a lot of feedback from folks that are that are spiritual care practitioners on our educational curriculum, and helping us really hone our educational curriculum so that it speaks to the current needs that folks are having in a variety of settings. And, of course, we do a lot of clinical pastoral education in healthcare, but I really hope that expands. And as that expands, we really are going to need the practitioners to help us understand what folks need to be educated about to perform at a really excellent level in a lot of different settings. So I look forward to that kind of integration and feedback. I also look forward to the opportunities for increased research, so that there's a research component where we have both, the practitioners, but the educators and we're continuing to educate folks about how to do research, and then the opportunity to participate in research projects. I think that we're going to really be able to expand that across both organizations. And I think that's a really exciting piece of this to me. And then honestly, I just think that, as happens when new things emerge, there are all kinds of new things that are going to happen that we can't even envision right now, that we really are, don't know yet because we haven't lived into it, but that there's so much rich opportunity in the membership of both organizations and in the really exciting new directions that we think about. So that's what I look forward to, is what's going to emerge that I can't even imagine right now.
Well, on behalf of our board and of the association, we are so grateful that both of you all have been a part of these conversations. Patrick, you are transitioning now, and Dagmar Greffe is going to step into that role as the new chair of the foundation. But thank you. Grateful for today, grateful for the work so far, and we really look forward to seeing where this goes from here.
Me too, very much so.
Good to be with you both talking about it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.